So the Peace Corps is the preeminent international service agency organization of the United States. It's run through the U.S. Department of State. It was established in 1961, and since then we have sent almost 250,000 volunteers abroad to serve communities overseas. Misconceptions, they're so commonplace to me that I've learned to ignore them. I think that the biggest one kind of has to do with stereotypes or archetypes for Peace Corps volunteers, so to speak. A lot of people think that Peace Corps volunteers are all bleeding heart liberals, save the world types. A lot of other folks, even the same folks, probably think that it's a lot of upper class white folks going into the Peace Corps as well. Volunteers join the Peace Corps for many different reasons and come from many different diverse backgrounds. Definitely a lesser known goal of Peace Corps to represent Americans in their entirety and how America actually is abroad. It also takes guts. I would say that, like bleeding heart sensitive types, save the world types, they're definitely brave to some extent. It definitely takes guts to leave your home, your old support systems behind, to learn a new language, live in a new place, a new country across the world, and in a culture that you may never fully understand when it comes down to the end of those 27 months of service. So the best way to answer this one is to talk about a little about how the application process works. When you search the openings on the peacecorps.gov website, you will notice that all the openings match into 6 different sectors of work. Those sectors are going to be youth development, education, health, community economic development, agriculture, and in the environment. Currently, there are 23 plus countries that are inviting volunteers to serve across the world. I mentioned the plus because every day, every week, Peace Corps office in DC reassesses if posts are ready and willing to receive volunteers, and especially given the COVID-19 pandemic worldwide, we're kind of re-entering the world, so to speak, as they say in Morocco, shwaya bishwaya, one step at a time. However, keep in mind that before the pandemic, we sent volunteers to over 60 countries worldwide. Yeah, so training is definitely the proper word. Training looks different in different sectors. So there are those 6 different sectors. There are technical skills trainings for volunteers specific to the work that they will be primarily engaged in country. Other trainings include language, cultural competency trainings, safety, security, and health and medical trainings, since a lot of volunteers will be working typically in rural sites. That is what the majority of posts are in rural sites. So having that background knowledge is very important for successful service. I will say that the majority of that training is completed during the first 3 months in service. You are part of community-based training, which we call CBT. Peace Corps loves acronyms, where you're stationed in a preliminary placement site with a host family, with other volunteers, and you're more or less going to language classes, back and forth to language classes. For me, it was going to soup, going to weddings, going to all sorts of different community events to get that experiential learning, both for the culture and the language. There are definitely benefits during your service and after your service. During service, you get full medical dental coverage. Like I mentioned before, you get a lot of pertinent linguistic sector-specific training that can build upon a career that you're already, you could be coming out of college, academically speaking, doing agriculture, going to the agriculture sector, and build upon those skills that you've already had and that knowledge base you already have via the Peace Corps. You also have 24/7 access during service to Peace Corps Post's medical office, safety security office, if emergency arises, because sometimes it does. There are also financial benefits during service. If you're just fresh out of college or, even far removed from college, you have student loan debt. There is loan deferment options that you can pursue in the Peace Corps where you won't have to pay any of that interest. Another specific benefit would be getting a TESOL certification. Peace Corps can be used as an opportunity to receive that certification for anyone that is interested in pursuing that in their career. Also, after service, returned Peace Corps volunteers have access to important graduate school benefits. You have lifetime eligibility for the Coverdell Fellowship Program. That's financial aid at specific universities across the country. You have 1 year of non-competitive eligibility status for federal government jobs. So that's GS7 through GS9 jobs. It's the civilian sector equivalent of corporal status. And if you are pursuing it, Peace Corps can count towards 2 years added to the public service loan forgiveness program if you anticipate going into a career of public service. I will definitely say, as a returned Peace Corps volunteer, Peace Corps can be wild. It's a 24/7 job. You are living in the country. You're not just working in the country. You don't literally wake up every morning and say, oh, like, what a beautiful morning. I'm going to get this, and this done today. Things happen. In regards to my experience, I had the amazing opportunity to discover myself through service, and I think that a lot of other volunteers will say the same. For myself personally, I had previously served as an AmeriCorps state member, so doing service here on a national level before my Peace Corps service directly after that. You know, those opportunities, and especially Peace Corps, opened my eyes to grassroots community development and impacted my career trajectory. And now I'm, of course, the Peace Corps recruiter at Michigan State University. But on top of that, I own an urban farm that is community-based in Reotown, Lansing, working on market and feasibility studies to increase the viability of said markets. So it has given me a passion and a drive for projects, for community development, for community economic development, and inclusivity in that regard. I would say that in general, like, my service has like broadened my perspective and given me space for that growth. And I've met a lot of amazing people along the way, specifically in my community, that shows me holistically what a community can be in terms of people, organizations, associations already there doing youth development, what methodologies they have. There was an artist who lived in an old kasbah, which is basically a kind of resort in the middle of town, with a drained pool, the only pool I identified in town through my entire 2 years of service there. And he basically was painting all day, every day. And he was actually a regionally renowned painter. Just individual stories like that really empower myself to do what I need to do for myself. I know it sounds a little selfish, but when everyone can be honest with themselves about themselves, they can interact with the world in a more holistic way and a more meaningful way. That really allowed me the space, the perspective, the space for growth to help me really understand my place in the world and what I want to do for a career and or careers. You know, full disclosure, I'm 28. I am part of a younger generation who is probably going to go through multiple careers in their lives. And it has shown me my resiliency, adaptability, and flexibility and creativity when it comes to seeing through the projects that I have in my life, which I think is very pertinent, especially for the younger generations in America. They really showed me how I want to live, more or less. Yes. However, what you experience academically is very different from what you experience experientially. That's kind of redundant. But yeah, I studied anthropology and Arabic at MSU with specializations minors, Muslim studies, women gender studies, and peace and justice studies. A lot of my work experience prior to Peace Corps has been in teaching advocacy and organizing. And in the Peace Corps, that experiential language learning, on top of like that academic style, maintaining a relativist perspective, cultural relativism, on top of that academic style, and actually moving that into practice. And the sector-specific knowledge were kind of the bread and butter of a successful term of service for me. And I had a lot of that experience prior to my service in the Peace Corps. It made me a more competitive candidate, and it helped me have a more successful term of service as well. Specifically, I should probably also mention, I was a youth development specialist in the Peace Corps. So any amount of teaching and advocacy, and especially with youth, has helped me tremendously in my work. I think the Hardest part of being away from home is not having that structure and support that you're used to. You aren't living in your own culture, within your own language. You're completely in a foreign place, in a foreign culture, with a foreign language surrounding you entirely, and you can't understand 100% of what is going on at all times. That structure and support, you start to realize, is very important and a core part of your being. You leave behind a lot of comforts when you join the Peace Corps, and you need to be able to rebuild it, so to speak, the structure and support that I mentioned. And developing good relationships with those community members, I mean, that's going to come naturally to Peace Corps volunteers, and also building good working relationships with other volunteers in the country is certainly a start to help potential volunteers overcome that. I think from my experience that people assume your service went well and that it was easy, that was 100% fulfilling at all times. And that certainly isn't the case. Everyone's service is different. Service can be difficult. Like I said, it is a 24/7 job. You are living in the country, and therefore you get all the ups and downs, the roller coasters of life. That being said, just ask if it comes up. I'm sure that any returned Peace Corps volunteers would be willing to talk about their service. And if you're interested in serving yourself, they're bound to talk more candidly about it. So core requirements for the Peace Corps are that you're 18 years of age and a U.S. citizen. However, due to the competitive nature of the Peace Corps, I'm not necessarily sure when they started doing it, but there are requirements for specific posts, and the majority of them require a bachelor's degree or 5 years of relevant work experience. Volunteer in your community, gain experience in a specific work sector that you're interested in, whether or not you're studying. There are a lot of volunteer and internship opportunities across the board for all those different work sectors, whether it's youth development to agriculture to community economic development. Another thing that Peace Corps looks for is that intercultural competency. So studying and working abroad are also great ways to kind of build the competitiveness of that application. Also, connecting with me in the Peace Corps office is a good idea. We have compiled lists of opportunities, especially locally, that candidates can take to make their application more competitive. Also, statistically speaking, candidates that connect with a Peace Corps recruiter are 55% more likely to become volunteers. So any student can basically make that connection with me, the Peace Corps recruiter, by shooting me an email at msupeace@msu.edu. Another way to prepare and make yourself a very competitive candidate is through the Peace Corps Prep program. It's a new certification program at MSU. It was launched just last year in October. It focuses on building 4 core competencies specific to the work sector and just general language and cultural competency that you'll need to have as a Peace Corps volunteer. And it does that through coursework and extracurriculars. So it takes all those like RSO experiences, for example, into account. To find out more about that, students can connect with Joy Campbell, who is the Peace Corps Prep Manager. If you go to isp.msu.edu, you can navigate to the Peace Corps page and find both Joy's and my contact information there.